In the heart of America's Great Depression, two names ignited a firestorm that burned through the pages of history. They were not just outlaws. They were folk heroes, both feared and admired. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, a pair whose names became synonymous with crime, love, and the unyielding pursuit of freedom. Amidst the chaos of economic hardship and societal unrest, they emerged, a duo whose story transcended the boundaries of law and captivated a nation desperate for hope. Their tale is one of adrenaline-fueled escapades, daring heists, and a love that flourished amidst chaos. From small-time thieves to America's public enemies #1, their escapades carved a trail of intrigue, mystery, and tragedy across the heartland. The law pursued, the public cheered, and the legends of Bonnie and Clyde grew. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker was born in 1910 in Rowena, Texas, the second of 3 children. Her father, Charles Robert Parker, was a bricklayer who died when Bonnie was 4 years old. Her widowed mother, Emma Krause Parker, moved her family back to her parents' home in Cement City, an industrial suburb in West Dallas where she worked as a seamstress. As an adult, Bonnie wrote poems such as The Story of Suicide Sal and The Trail's End, the latter more commonly known as The Story of Bonnie and Clyde. In her second year in high school, Parker met Roy Thornton. The couple dropped out of school and married on September 25, 1926, 6 days before her 16th birthday. Their marriage was marred by his frequent absences and brushes with the law, and proved to be short-lived. They never divorced, but their paths never crossed again after January 1929. Parker was still wearing the wedding ring Thornton had given her when she died. Thornton was in prison when he heard of her death, commenting, "I'm glad they jumped out like they did. It's much better than being caught." Sentenced to 5 years for robbery in 1933, and after attempting several prison breaks from other facilities, Thornton was killed while trying to escape from the Huntsville State Prison on October 3, 1937. After she left Thornton, Parker moved back in with her mother and worked as a waitress in Dallas. One of her regular customers was postal worker Ted Hinton. In 1932, he joined the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and eventually served as a member of the posse that killed Bonnie and Clyde. Parker briefly kept a diary early in 1929, when she was aged 18, writing of her loneliness, her impatience with life in Dallas, and her love of photography. Clyde Chestnut Barrow was born in 1909 into a poor farming family in Ellis County, Texas, southeast of Dallas. He was the 5th of 7 children of Henry Basil Barrow and Cumi Talitha Walker. The family moved to Dallas in the early 1920s as part of a wider migration pattern from rural areas to the city, where many settled in the urban slum of West Dallas. The Barrows spent their first months in West Dallas living under their wagon until they got enough money to buy a tent. Barrow was first arrested in late 1926, at age 17, after running when police confronted him over a rental car that he had failed to return on time. His second arrest was with his brother Buck soon after, for possession of stolen turkeys. Barrow had some legitimate jobs from 1927 through 1929, but he also cracked safes, robbed stores, and stole cars. He met 19-year-old Parker through a mutual friend in January 1930, and they spent much time together during the following weeks. Their romance was interrupted when Barrow was arrested by Dallas County Sheriff's Deputy Burt Wisnand and convicted of auto theft. Barrow was sent to Eastham Prison Farm in April 1930 at the age of 21. He escaped from the prison farm shortly after his incarceration, using a weapon Parker smuggled to him. He was recaptured shortly after and sent back to prison. Barrow was repeatedly sexually assaulted while in prison, and he retaliated by attacking and ending his tormentor with a pipe, crushing his skull. It was the first time he slain. Another inmate who was already serving a life sentence claimed responsibility. To avoid hard labor in the fields, Barrow purposely had 2 of his toes amputated in late January 1932, either by another inmate or by himself. Because of this, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. However, without his knowledge, Barrow's mother had already successfully petitioned for his release, and he was set free 6 days after his intentional injury. He was paroled from Eastham on February 2, 1932, now a hardened and bitter criminal. His sister, Marie, said, "Something awful sure must have happened to him in prison because he wasn't the same person when he got out." Fellow inmate Ralph Foltz said that he watched Clyde change from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake. In his post-Eastham career, Barrow robbed grocery stores and gas stations at a rate far outpacing the 10 or so bank robberies attributed to him and the Barrow gang. His favorite weapon was the M1918 Browning automatic rifle. According to John Neal Phillips, Barrow's goal in life was not to gain fame or fortune from robbing banks, but to seek revenge against the Texas prison system for the abuses that he had sustained while serving time. Several accounts describe Parker and Barrow's first meeting. One of the more credible versions is that they met on January 5, 1930, at the home of Barrow's friend, Clarence Clay, at 105 Herbert Street in West Dallas. Barrow was 20 years old, and Parker was 19. Parker was out of work and staying with a female friend to assist her during her recovery from a broken arm. Barrow dropped by the girl's house while Parker was in the kitchen making hot chocolate. Both were smitten immediately. Most historians believe that Parker joined Barrow because she had fallen in love with him. She remained his loyal companion as they carried out their many crimes and awaited the violent end that they viewed as inevitable. Their criminal activities escalated in violence and scope as they started targeting banks. Their first documented bank robbery together was in April 1932, when they robbed an establishment in Hillsborough, Texas, seizing around $800. This marked a significant shift in their criminal pursuits, moving from small-time thefts to more brazen and lucrative heists. Bonnie and Clyde's criminal career continued to evolve, and their notoriety grew as they eluded law enforcement and continued their spree of robberies across the central United States. The duo's criminal activities and daring escapes made them infamous and led to a nationwide manhunt by law enforcement agencies. Buck Barrow, initially living a lawful life, joined his brother Clyde after being released from prison due to health issues. Blanche, Buck's wife, also became involved in the criminal activities of the gang. Their inclusion added to the notoriety of the group and increased both the risks and the intensity of their criminal pursuits. Buck and Blanche participated in several of the gang's activities, including armed robberies and shootouts with law enforcement. However, their involvement took a tragic turn during a shootout in Dexfield Park, Iowa, where Buck sustained severe injuries. He and Blanche were captured by the authorities following that incident. Buck Barrow later died from his injuries, while Blanche was captured and imprisoned. Their involvement with Bonnie and Clyde marked a tumultuous and dangerous chapter in their lives as they became entangled in the notorious criminal exploits of the Barrow gang. Other members became more involved. One was W.D. Jones. He became involved with Bonnie and Clyde through a chance encounter. In 1932, at the age of 16, Jones crossed paths with Clyde Barrow when Clyde was attempting to steal his family's car in Texas. Instead of reporting the attempted theft, Jones was intrigued by Clyde's audacity and joined him. Jones's involvement with Bonnie and Clyde developed as he was drawn into their criminal activities. He became a member of the Barrow gang, participating in various robberies and criminal escapades alongside the notorious duo. Despite his young age, Jones was an active participant in their illegal endeavors, and his association with the gang continued for a significant period during their crime spree. Eventually, W.D. Jones left the gang before the final encounter that led to Bonnie and Clyde's deaths. After leaving the criminal life behind, he surrendered to authorities, served time in prison, and later provided valuable insights into the activities and personalities of Bonnie and Clyde during their time together. The last member, Henry Methvin, became associated with Bonnie and Clyde in the latter part of their criminal career, around early 1934. He joined the Barrow gang shortly before the events leading to the ambush that resulted in the deaths of Bonnie and Clyde. Methvin's involvement with the gang was instrumental in setting up the fatal ambush orchestrated by law enforcement. He made a deal with authorities to cooperate in exchange for leniency for his own criminal activities and involvement with the Barrow gang. On May 23rd, law enforcement officers, including Texas Rangers and local authorities, set up an ambush along a rural road near Sales, Louisiana. Bonnie and Clyde's car, a stolen Ford V8, was riddled with bullets as they approached the ambush site. The officers opened fire, and Bonnie and Clyde were killed in the hail of bullets. Actual film footage taken by one of the deputies immediately after the ambush shows 112 bullet holes in the vehicle, of which around 1/4 struck the couple. Methvin's collaboration with law enforcement marked a crucial turning point in the hunt for Bonnie and Clyde, ultimately leading to the planned ambush that brought an end to their criminal spree. Bonnie and Clyde killed 12 people, including 9 law enforcement officers during their 2 years of criminal activity from February 1932 to May 1934. The circumstances around the ownership of Bonnie and Clyde's car, the stolen Ford V8 they were driving at the time of their deaths, are somewhat convoluted. After the ambush that resulted in the deaths of Bonnie and Clyde, there was widespread interest in anything associated with the notorious duo. The Ford V8, in which they were fatally shot, became a macabre and sought-after relic. The car was impounded by law enforcement as evidence after the ambush. Eventually, its ownership and fate became a matter of contention. Various stories emerged regarding who had the right to claim it. Ruth Warren, the owner of a cafe where Bonnie and Clyde had eaten shortly before their deaths, claimed that the car was hers. However, the car had been stolen, and she was not able to prove ownership. There were also others who attempted to claim to the vehicle. Ultimately, the Ford V8 was put on display at various locations, drawing crowds curious to see the bullet-riddled car associated with the infamous Outlaws. It became a morbid attraction, traveling around the country for display. The car was displayed at fairs, amusement parks, and flea markets for 3 decades, and once became a fixture at a Nevada racetrack. There was a charge of $1 to sit in it. The ambiguity and lack of clear ownership led to disputes and claims from multiple individuals, but the car itself became a morbidly fascinating relic of Bonnie and Clyde's tumultuous and infamous lives. As of 2022, the car and the shirt Barrow was wearing when killed are displayed at Prim Valley Resort and Casino in Prim, Nevada, alongside Interstate 15.